Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 86. On Monday there, we had the digital dairy chain, which is quite an exciting development in the dairy sector here in Scotland and, for that matter, North England. £20 million investment into the sector and sort of the rural industries surrounding that. So very good for that industry and hopefully quite promising for those associated companies. On next Friday, we'll have, from what I'm aware of, Britain's biggest farming TikToker, I could be wrong, and Maria Warren. So I've been following Maria since right at the start of the days of TikTok, her getting her grandpa, I would say, but as the Cornish word is, grandfer, to shout different things and say things none of us understand. So another exciting one coming there on Friday. But today we have the female hoof trimmer and Sophie Mitchell-Smith. So I'm going to learn. I think this is going to be one of those podcasts where I'm going to sort of have to just pretend I have any idea what you're talking about, because it's not something I've been involved in. I'm not someone that watches a lot of these sort of pimple popping, hoof trimming type YouTube videos, because I must say, they don't do the same thing for me that they do for a lot of people.
That's it. I bet that's quite rare, because a lot of people are they love it.
They absolutely love it. Love it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can't get over it.
I can see why it's interesting, that the hoof trimming one, in fairness. I totally get it. And I have sat down with my dad a few times to watch them. But I mean, let's not get into pimple popping, because I'll just feel sick. But that side of things, I don't know why people watch all that sort of thing. Oh, well, not for me. Not for me at all.
I've got to admit, I'm a little bit guilty with that one.
Are you? Do you do watch them?
Oh yeah, I love stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I'm always like popping like spots on my husband's back. I just can't help it.
I do not get it. That's quite a common thing, though. Quite a lot of folk do that to their partner, don't they? I just don't get it. Yeah. I just don't get it. I'm very weird like that sort of thing. I've got quite a soft stomach, and stuff like that are just not satisfying. I love, do you know the videos, the hydraulic press, and they put things in and they blow up and whatever. That's sort of thing. Yeah. You can't feel sick watching that, you know.
No, I like watching, like, like pressure washing, like when they do like patios and stuff. And I don't even know why it's so satisfying. I don't get it, but you just keep watching it.
There's that. I don't know if you've seen that guy on TikTok who sort of like watches, like, he puts the video of that on, like, for example, pressure washing a patio or whatever, and he sort of like puts his own face over it and just screams when they don't finish. And like, I feel myself, like, they'll do the whole thing and there's like a tiny little line they haven't done. And
that goes through me.
I'm not going to sleep tonight. Why have you done this?
No, why would you leave just that little? Oh no, it's cruel.
It's very cruel, very, very cruel. Well, that's been an interesting intro to the podcast, talking about pimple popping and cleaning patios. So that's been a good one. There's a lot of P's in there.
It kind of links into
it does a wee bit. It does a wee bit. What's that? Pimple popping, pressure washing. Oh, that's not a P. So quite a lot of P's there. But Sophie, tell us about yourself. Aside your sort of satisfaction watching videos.
Yeah.
Just before we get started with another episode of the R2Kast, I would like to thank our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan Rural are heavily involved on the social media scene in the ag space, with 120,000 followers on Instagram. They use this following to host social media takeovers with farmers throughout the country to showcase their stories. They also post to their rural community blog with further stories about these people in the industry. On top of this, they like to support initiatives that are championing the British agricultural industry, such as myself. So thank you to A-Plan Rural for that.
I'm well, as you can tell from the name, the female cattle hoof trimmer. I have been for the past 10 years. I work alongside my dad, so we've been a father-daughter team for 10 years, and I've got a daughter, and and life's pretty good at the moment.
Good. Was like, when did you think, hoof trimming might be fun? Was that just something you did as a kid with your old man, or?
When my mum and dad started trimming, I was kind of like going along now and then and helping out. But actually before that, my mum and dad used to do relief milking, and I used to just go now and then to help them do that as well.
Right.
So I kind of like got into farming in that way, and I kind of just like fell into the trimming because my mum had to eventually stop,
Right.
and I was going a bit more and I thought, oh, hang on a minute, I actually like quite enjoy this. And then I started doing a bit of trimming myself, because at first I was kind of just going to help my dad get cows in and write stuff down and just do odd little bits like that. And then when I actually got a feel for the actual trimming, and I was like, oh my god, this is like pretty satisfying. And then you start kind of seeing the work that you did, like for the cows, and then it just grew and grew, and then I never looked back since.
And was your mum and dad from farming before?
My dad was more from farming than my mum. So my dad used to work on my uncle's farm, and then he then went to agricultural college, and then my mum and dad then went to manage farms. So the first farm that they ever managed was at Bankery up in Scotland, and I think they did 2 farms up there, and then they ended up moving to Yorkshire to manage a farm there, and then eventually going on to Warrington. They managed a farm there, but every time they were having to move, it was because they were getting made redundant.
Yeah.
Farms were just packing up. And then I was actually born in Warrington, so I only had about two years there, until we had to move back to Oldham, which is actually where my mum and dad are from.
Yeah.
So then the farming side of it all kind of disappeared. Like my mum and dad were doing like relief milking, but only like now and then alongside other jobs. And then my dad somehow managed to find out about hoof trimming, and then that's how them two got into it.
It sounds like they've farmed everywhere.
Quite a few farms, yeah.
They've tried all the places. They've certainly. I assume you don't remember much about Warrington, given you left at 2. But it's always a dangerous game trying to gauge someone's age. But I'm guessing if you've been in this 10 years, you pretty much left school into it. Or am I wrong there?
How old do you think I am?
Well, my guess from that would be I'm guessing a couple of years older than myself, about 27. Oh, that's dangerous.
31.
Oh, well, that's worked well for both of us. I can't get in trouble. And
no.
Was there anything before you kicked off in hoof trimming after you left school? Or
so I'd actually had plans to join the police.
Okay.
I didn't like have my heart set on it. I just kind of like, I was trying to think of different things that I could do with my career, and I joined the Special Constables, which is like a voluntary job, but you've got exactly more or less the same powers as in the police. So I did that for, I think that was like 2 years. I realised it wasn't really for me. I really enjoyed it, but it just wasn't for me at all. Like, I probably because I was only like 21 when I did it.
Yeah.
I was a lot more shy back then than I was now. So I think maybe with dealing with people, it might have been a bit harder for me back then than it probably would have been now. But yeah, anyway, I didn't really enjoy it. So then at the same time I was trimming. So the kind of the liking of the trimming took over. So I was just like, well, I'm just going to start doing this special constable stuff. And then I decided to go and do a course, and then never looked back.
and did you jump straight in with your dad, or did you try yourself on your own, or did you jump into business?
I've literally just worked with my dad.
Just followed on helping moving in the cows, like you said.
So it's only it's only recently where I've actually been going on odd days by myself. So like if my dad's been ill or something like that, and I've been able to go to a farm where they can help me out. But I mean, yeah, it's always more or less been me and my dad.
What's that's quite interesting, because I mean, you quite often hear, well, it's quite interesting. I'm just sort of trying to look back on the podcast at how many folk are working with parents. It's quite often maybe like a mum or a dad are sort of just nearing the end, or sort of retiring, that sort of thing. The end of their career, not the end. That sounds terrible. I just realised how that came out.
At the very end.
Yeah. Good God, Wallace, weren't that better? The end of their career, they're coming towards retirement, thinking on easing off a bit. That's what I meant. And they're sort of jumping on, taking more responsibility. But it sounds like you've sort of jumped in at just the sort of peak of business for your old man, just jumping in and I assume making the job quicker is sort of how you came in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like when my mum had to kind of stop because she had to look after my nana, so it was kind of forced on in that way. But as I've come in, I've like helped to improve. So say like they were on like paper, like writing everything down on paper, like it's a bit of youth thing. Like I've got them onto the computer, which makes it a lot quicker as well. And plus my mum could never like use the grinder, so my dad was always having to do all the grinder work on the feet, so then she'd do the knife work. Whereas now I'm doing the grinder work as well, so that makes it a hell of a lot quicker. So like me and dad can do 2 feet at once, whereas before it was a lot slower when it was my mum and dad. And plus it's kind of worked out better because as me and my dad have gone on with the years, like the numbers of cows have gone up. So so it kind of works that we can both equally do the work. So then it's a lot quicker. So then you're finishing and, you know, a lot sooner, and you're not getting probably as longer days as you probably would have back when my mum and dad were doing it. And also probably the feet are in a lot better shape now, because we're doing more. So we can,
You've already made me feel quite silly because the whole time since I got in touch with you, I knew it was a sort of daughter-father thing. I was like, must have 2 crushes. How else would they do it together? Of course. That's so stupid. Oh God, sometimes I question myself. My poor agricultural students that listen to me sometimes must think, who have they got as a lecturer? That's so. I genuinely have been trying to rack my brains. Like, I wonder how that one works. Do they just go to separate farms? They must have 2 crushes. It's the only way it can possibly work. So that makes more sense. I've got you now. To
be fair though, there are some people that actually work with their dad, but they actually do work separately because they've got so many customers. They are running 2 crushes.
Yeah.
Especially if they've got like a massive farm where they're doing like, say, I don't know, like over 100, then they will need 2 crushes to get through the numbers. Because I mean, the most me and dad have ever done is like 70 in a day, and that's a big day. I don't know, like you definitely need 2 crushes if you were doing like over 100 cattle in a day.
Well, I've got questions about the actual process in a minute. One question I really want to know is how is it working with a father? You know, because quite a lot of people, it's difficult. Some folk just get on great. Do you work well with your dad? Just goes well.
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah, because I've heard of some people that actually struggle to kind of work with the parents because you've got like mixed views and ideas and stuff. But I mean, I think it's good if you've got someone to work with, you can kind of, like me and dad kind of like we bounce off each other, and we are very close anyway. And I mean, some days we don't even like hardly speak to each other because we know what each other's doing like all the time. Like we've got our own little roles in the day that we know. You know, like I'll like carry on trimming while my dad goes and fetches a cow, and we just kind of click in some ways. I mean, we have like little like disagreements on what the treatment is.
I'm sure.
If like a cow's got like some bruising, I'm like, look, let's just block it, and you know, it'll help the benefit. And he's like, oh well, I think she's got enough height on the other side, and I'm just like, just block it. But yeah, I mean, but it is good when there's two people deciding what's best for the cow, so it's not all on the one person, which sometimes it can be like you can wonder what the best thing to do is. So, but yeah, I mean, overall we work really well together. We hardly argue or anything, and yeah, we just nicely click, I think.
That's good. I take it you've got a daughter and a husband. You won't be staying at home, but are you nearby? I take it it's
I'm literally a minute walk. That's it.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. So it's different house, so that means you're not constantly together. So that probably helps things as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I would just like to quickly interrupt the show for a minute to give you some extra information on our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan offer bespoke cover for farms and estates the UK over, and will give you tailored insurance for anything on the farm, from your old workhorse tractor that's been around 20 years or a fancy new and exciting diversification.
So you've been saying things like using the grinder, using the knife, using the block. Three things I actually know what they are, but that's just about where my knowledge of this finishes. Hoof trimming, as we said sort of right at the start, is one of those things that's massively blown up on social media. Yeah. Thanks to a few people, yourself being one of them. There is obviously one main person that's absolutely blown it up in Graham Barker. But what are you actually looking for? Like what is, I remember I interviewed a hoof trimmer once before, and they said the best way to hoof trim is in a preventative state, just hoof trimming routine, not actually trying to hoof trim a problem. But is that right? Yeah. Is that sort of what you're after? Yeah.
Yeah, that is exactly right. It's all, you can't stress enough to people how much the prevention side of trimming is one of the most important things, because the prevention is hopefully stopping you from having to do all the curative side.
Yeah.
So when we go to farms, we advise that the cows get done at, say, between 60 to 100 days in milk, dry off stage are the two main times to trim a cow. And obviously, if the cow goes lame in the meantime, then she'll get seen then. But the prevention is it's so important. Like, you can't stress it on the farmer enough. And to be fair, like, most of our customers are very good at that. They'll do them at the right time. So yeah, very important.
Yeah. And if you are trimming routine hoofs, yeah, and what are you expecting to see there? Is that like a 10-second process, or how what's involved in that?
So when you lift the hoof up, you're looking at what actually needs doing. So at some farms you'll get a foot up and it'll hardly need touching. It'll literally need modelling out. That's it.
Right.
So the modelling out is relieving the area where the most pressure is put, from the pedal bone that presses down onto the corium. So what you want to do is relieve that area to stop any bruising or any sole ulcers from occurring from that area.
Right.
But I mean, you can, all feet are different shapes and sizes, so you need, observation is the key really when you look at a foot. I mean, you can get them where they're quite badly long overgrown, so like they're quite long, so you need to trim them back to the correct length. And sometimes they can be, because they're quite long, they can be quite deep in the sole.
Okay.
So it's all about getting them in that right shape and maintaining that throughout that year. So that's why it's important to be doing them at those stages, to make sure that they don't get overgrown and they don't put pressures on areas that they shouldn't do.
And then the side that as I said online, that sells is when there's issues. What sort of issues are you expecting to see in dairy cattle? Is there things that you know you're going to see all the time? Is there things that are a shock?
Yeah. It depends what farm you go to. So sometimes you know that that dermatitis is going to be an issue at that farm. You just know it is. But yeah, so dermatitis is quite a favourite to find, and there's white line disease and solo. So they're probably the main issues that you're going to see amongst dairy herds. You will find some, like, I don't know if you've heard of them, like tonocrosis.
Yeah.
So that's they can be nasty. But yeah, the three main ones are white line disease, dermatitis, and ulcers.
And I'm genuinely so interested here. You might just tell me to go to your Instagram and see, but how do you treat these different problems?
So with dermatitis, we tend to use a copper sulfate gel to treat it, but we advise the farmer, if you see any dermatitis on the cow, try and spray it in. It's spot treatment, basically. White line disease and ulcers are normally mainly the thing that we can do is by sticking a block onto the other claw, because the block helps relieve that that lame claw from the cow putting the weight on it. And but yeah, that's and trimming them back as well if you can. That's really the main ways that we can kind of help the cows out, really.
And you mentioned blocks, and yes, what not what is a block? A block's a block. How do you use the block? How do you attach them? How do they work? What are you going to use them for?
Yeah. So we use different. You can use a different range of blocks. So we use wooden blocks and like plastic blocks. The plastic blocks are for more like problems that you want the block to last a bit longer, because they don't wear as quick as a wooden block.
Right.
So what we do is we glue them onto the claw. We use Bovibond, it's called.
Okay.
And it's really good stuff. I mean, the stuff that people used to use was an absolute nightmare. You used to have to mix a liquid and a powder together, and then it'd take forever to go off. It was an absolute nightmare. But these blocks that we use now, where you literally there's two things. There's two, what are they called? There's like two substances in this cartridge, and they mix.
Right.
And it literally goes off in about 30 seconds. And
right.
whereas before it used to take about 3 or 5 minutes for this stuff to go off. It was an absolute nightmare. I used to get my mum and dad off that stuff. I was just like, okay. I'm not using this anymore.
So when you got involved, you wanted to digitize some of the paperwork and get rid of this old product. That was what happened.
I am not using this anymore. If I'm having to put the blocks on, we're going to glue. But I think more or less every single foot trimmer uses glue now. It's because the quicker you can trim and treat a cow, the better, because you don't want them staying in the crush for too long. You literally want them in and out and back to resting and eating and stuff. So but it's just, everything's a lot quicker nowadays. It's shocking, really, compared to what it was like 10 years ago. The crushes have advanced so much. They're done in no time. They don't even know what's happened. Some of them, they're just like, oh, I've been trimmed.
Why did my leg lift up? It's time to go. Some of the crushes are quite something.
They're
amazing. I mean, we've got a crush at work. It's not a hoof trimming crush, just quite a fancy Clip-X crush. And compared to what we have at home, I'm like, good God, this is fancy. And then you see some of the hoof trimming ones. I'm like, Jesus, like a TARDIS. There's so much here. There's so many bits. I'm like, how do they know what every bit does? There's so many. They are actually. Some engineering in them. With a block, how long can they wait on? Is that like it'll come off itself, or do you, the next time you're in, take it off? How does that work?
yeah, so some fall off by themselves after about 4 or 5 weeks. But we normally say any kind of cow with a block, and with like if we don't go to that farm for like 6 weeks, I always ask to see them again to make sure that
Right.
the block's not because if a block's left on too long, it can start like digging into the like the heel area, because obviously the hooves grow, so then the block falls forward and then it'll start pressing. So it's important that we actually see them again. But I mean, a lot of the time the blocks can just fall off themselves. But yeah, I like checking cows when I can, just to make sure that doesn't happen, because there's nothing more irritating than healing up the side that was the problem.
Yeah.
Then the other side's the issue now, just because the block didn't get taken off quick enough.
Yeah, that'd be very annoying.
Yeah.
I'd mentioned to some friends about bringing yourself onto the podcast, and they were like, "Oh, I've got a question for it." And the question was, what is the worst thing you've came across? Hoof trimming, not just in life.
The worst thing in hoof trimming? Oh God. I don't know. I'm not sure actually. Probably just the horrible necrotic toes that you can get.
They must just. Do they smell bad? I assume they do.
Oh, they smell so bad. Like if I've been to a farm where they've had necrotic, like a couple of necrotic toes, and I come home and Will's like, "You stink," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I can't help it," but he can just smell it straight away. It just clings onto your clothes. The horrible. I'd probably say they're like, that's like the worst I've seen, really. Like you see like little things in cow feet, like do you know, like cow's teeth, or like a nail. I've had a nail in a cow's foot which was literally sticking out like into it that much, and I was thinking, you just think, how was she even? Well, she wasn't really walking on it, but.
And like, what do you do there? It's not just like taking a nail out of wood, is it? Or is it? Is that what you do?
Yeah, literally, you literally just pull it out. But the stuff that they get in the feet is just, it just might, you think you've seen it all, and then you find something so extraordinary. You wonder,
but
you wonder whether you even pick them up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the relief for taking that nail out must have been amazing. Do they then, are they then able to walk, or are they still pretty notably lame after that, I assume? Like that example, like with the nail. That's not going to be a effect, is it?
Yeah, so no, well, no, they will be lame for like probably a week or two after, but it's all about the, getting a block on. It's the treatment afterwards, and obviously the farmer would probably give us some pain relief for that. Anything like that, anything really painful.
And like in sheep, we get that thing. I say in sheep, we, as if I'm a sheep. I've just more work with sheep. Get the sort of the granuloma, which is like the wee sort of strawberry looking thing on top of the hoof. And like, truth is, people have got ideas as to what it is, but no one's got a strict reason as to where it comes from. Is that the same with like the necrosis in the toe there, or do we know what's happening there? Do we know what's caused that, or do we not really know?
So normally a necrotic toe started because of either, do you know, if she gets like an abscess in a toe and it's been left untreated, that's that, I'd probably say that's the favourite. So if she's got like a stone in it or something like that. But they also think that dermatitis plays a big part in it. So if, say, she has got like a lesion or an abscess in a toe, and then the dermatitis gets onto that lesion and it just eats away at it, and the infection just goes deeper and deeper into the toe, and that's how they can kind of start. Me and Dad have always, other people have probably thought this as well, but if you go to a farm that has got quite a high dermatitis rate, they're gonna have necrotic toes.
Right. Okay.
I have always found that. So say like we go to a farm every week. They're really hot on the foot bathing, got hardly any dermy, and you'd be lucky if you even saw one or two necrotic toes there. Whereas
Right.
whereas you could go to another farm that the dermatitis is an issue, and they'll have like a good few cows with necrotic toes, because it's just like it's not under control, the dermatitis. That's the problem, and it's everywhere. It's horrible stuff.
So your husband, did you say his name was Will? Did I catch that right?
You got, sorry?
Did you say your husband's name was Will? Did
Yes.
I catch that? Yeah, so Will knows the days you're going to come back, and he's going to know what the smell is. He knows.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes,
to like prepare himself. So if you, yeah, as soon as I walk through the door, he's like, oh, you stink.
Oh dear. What was I going to say? I feel like I good. Yeah. So you're saying there, like, you're going to some places every week. I'm guessing you don't have many clients because you're quite often at those places. Is that how it works, or?
Yeah. So like we used to have quite a lot when I'd say like 6 or 7 years ago. We were really, really busy, but as time's gone on, farmers have kind of retired. Like we've not lost, but like 3 of our farmers have retired because, with the cow prices being so good at the moment, I think they've just got to retirement age, and they're just like, we might as well do it now while the prices are good. But because even though we've like say lost those 3 customers in quite a short space,
yes,
it's not really overly affecting us because the farms that we're going to at the moment are giving us more work.
Yeah.
So like the one that we go to every week's got like 800 or 900 cows, and we go every week doing at least 50 or 60, and then like you'll get where sometimes they'll be like, oh, can you do us an extra day, and they're kind of like filling in the days that you've been missing.
Yeah, that's handy.
Yeah. So it's not seemed so bad that we've lost a couple, but I mean my dad's not like really wanting to work at full speed like we were like 6 or 7 years ago, because he's getting older, and so I don't blame him for that. We're not really like out looking for work, like advertising or anything like that, because we've probably just got enough on with what we've got now.
And I don't know what age your daughter is, but is she showing any interest? Does she come along, or is she just too young?
She's only 4.
Probably too young to be starting then.
Yeah, a little bit too young. Yeah. Although I don't know, I might get her working soon.
Yeah, you might have more clients coming in.
No.
Do you lift all 4 hoofs every time?
No, we can't do that in our crush. You can do in some others, but me and Dad lift 2 feet up at once. So say when I'm doing the back right foot, my dad will do the front left foot.
No, sorry, I mean like, so every time a cow comes in, do you lift all 4 before she goes out? I know not at the exact same time.
Oh right, yeah. I see.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So with the preventative trimming, we always do all 4 feet.
Right.
If we get a cow in that's just coming for like say like a lame back foot, sometimes we'll only do the back 2 feet.
Right.
Unless we notice she's got overgrown front feet, then we'll do them.
Yeah.
But we get some farmers that say like, oh, she only needs the 1 foot doing, and you're like, well, no. She needs both of them looking at, because you just know that if you don't look at both feet, then she's going to go lame on the other foot. So you might as well do it while she's in. It's just worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they're saying that, is it paid per hoof?
Yeah, so
right.
Yeah, so it's a certain cost. So like they'll obviously
you don't have to say
less.
prices if you don't want to, by the way.
No. So they'll obviously like pay less for just to have the 1 foot done.
Yeah.
But really, it's probably more cost effective to have both feet done, because then you know that she's had the other foot trimmed. But they don't see it like that.
No, I know it's money right now. That's what it's seen, isn't it? As opposed to
yeah,
for sure.
I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry.
You're quite big on Instagram, Sophie. Is it just Instagram? You YouTube as well, haven't you? YouTube?
No, I don't do YouTube. No,
it's just Instagram.
I've had a few people. Yeah, it's just Instagram. So I've had a few people asking, like, do you do YouTube or anything? And yeah, do you know when you're like kind of like and ahhing about it? But then I think, well, you know, there's already other foot trimmers on there doing it. So I don't know. Maybe one day I might do it.
Do you know what it sells well on? I mean, like some folk do the sort of 10-minute YouTube videos, landscape videos, but it would sell very well on like the sort of shorts type channels, YouTube Shorts, TikToks, all that sort of thing. I assume you do a lot of reels, don't you, on Instagram?
Yeah.
That would go down well. Just go through TikTok, looking at whatever you are on TikTok, a dance, and then a hoof trimmer comes up, because that's happened to me a few times. So yeah, no. Why and when did you start Instagram? What brought that about?
So I started Instagram when lockdown was on. So
yeah.
I actually posted a video of me trimming on Facebook, on my personal Facebook. I realised it was getting a bit of interest, and I was like, hang on a minute, like people might actually find this interesting. So I actually had no intention of putting it on Instagram.
Right.
At all, because I just didn't think it'd do well at all. And I was just going to stick with it on Facebook. So I made like a female hoof trimmer thing on Facebook. And then I was just sat there and I was like, right, I'll just see how it goes on Instagram. And it ended up being the most successful, which is absolutely,
really?
Yeah. So, but I also didn't realise at the time what a big farming community there was on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, it's absolutely crazy. Like, honestly, I just didn't realise how many, obviously more younger farmers that have accounts on there, but I couldn't believe it. Like, and then the more you got talking to people, like, you obviously, like, everyone shares each other's stuff. So the more you got shared, the more popular it got. And I think because you don't really come across many girls that are in trimming, I don't really, at the time there wasn't anyone that actually, like, there was girls doing it, but there wasn't actually any girls that had a profile set up on there, an account. So I thought, oh well, I'll take advantage of it and see whether it gets any interest in it, and it did, surprisingly. And I've had anything but positive things off people, and it's and I've made some friends on there that I probably would have never have made friends with before in farming, because obviously a lot of my friends were from the not from a farming community. So it's been really nice to have that kind of contact through Instagram with other people that are in farming.
It's quite interesting you sort of mention about the sort of network that's there in farming on Instagram. I started pretty much during lockdown as well. It was like 2 weeks into lockdown. I was back home lambing, and I was like, oh, let's post some videos of some lambs, and it just started then. And I was just posting some content, some videos on Facebook. It was Facebook I started on as well, and I got quite pally with Cammy, like sheep game, quite early on. And obviously he was like flying at this point, really starting to sort of kick off. And he was probably the first one I got quite close with. And then over the last 3 years, like I have countless friends, people I could go to for quite a lot of things that some of them I haven't even met yet, all through Instagram. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And like you say, everyone proper supports each other, shares each other's stuff, pushes each other's content, and all that sort of thing. It's brilliant. Absolutely love it. It's such a cool little community. It is a community, you know.
Yeah.
I say little. It's a big bloody community. There's a lot of folk.
I honestly, it really shocked me, like, how many people were on there. I just couldn't believe it, like, and how popular it is as well. Like, I mean, you're going to get some people like with some,
of course,
you know, like getting issues like with like vegans and stuff like that. I've seen people share that stuff, but overall, I think people have actually just got a massive, genuine interest into farming, and I think it's a really good way for people to see what farming's actually about, because some people will just never be able to get on a farm, an actual working farm.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, you can go to your petting farms, but they're not the same, are they? That's not actual proper farm.
Well, that's it. And do you know that's it. I mean, we can sort of see some lambs sitting around or some goats playing around, but you're not seeing what a farm is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's funny you mentioned that, actually. I'm not from Dumfries, but I live in Dumfries, and there's a place that I pass every day going to work called Dalscon Farm, and they're the most followed, let me get this right, the most followed farm park in the world on Facebook. Yeah, and they do lives every day, like talking to goats, and it's like 3,500 likes. I'm like, this is mad. Like, I can hear the goats, you know. But it's brilliant getting that sort of story out. And his Instagram, you said you don't sort of use it to market the business or anything like that, but has it sort of created any opportunities for you, Instagram, or do you just like posting on there and seeing where it goes?
Yeah, I just like kind of showing what our day to day is really. Like, I mean, I've had some good like, I mean, even like doing these kind of podcast things I mean, it's given me a chance to kind of like get out there and stuff, and meet people, like, and talk about hoof trimming and stuff. It's I mean, I've got to be honest, like, say 10 years ago, I'd have never been able to do this.
Well, you said you were quite shy, yeah. So that's
so doing this sort of stuff has actually kind of helped my confidence massively. But yeah, it's been good since I've joined. I've been able to, you know, like, I've been in like the Farmer's Guardian and stuff like that, and which probably would have never have happened if I wasn't on there.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like I said before, you just don't come across many girls that do it, and it is a very male dominated industry. But I mean,
is it still, Sophie? Is it still male dominated?
I'd probably say it is still male dominated, but you are hearing of more girls coming out now. I did a few weeks ago, because I asked some girls that I knew that did hoof trimming to send me like a picture of them doing it, and then write a bit of a paragraph of how they got into it, because I just think it's quite interesting, like, how they even got it. Because I got through my dad.
Yeah.
But if my dad had never have done it, I'd have never have done it. So it's like it's interesting to know how they got into it, and because I had a girl message me like last year saying that she was interested in doing hoof trimming, but she kept getting told off people to not bother because it's too dangerous and all this lot.
All right.
And you just wonder why people why they were like putting her off it.
The way I see it is, if a cow can damage a woman, they can damage a man. There's not that much of a difference. They're so much bigger than us. It doesn't change. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, women have got like a bit of a disadvantage with the strength, but God, there's like on the farms that I go to, all the staff are quite willing to help.
But the crush is doing the strength. Yeah, the crush is doing the majority of the strength. Yeah.
Really, the only thing that you're going to probably need the strength for is if, say, your setup's not very good. So if you haven't got a race and you're having to push them up and stuff. But I mean, there's always people there to help you. They're not gonna be like, right, I'm going now. See ya. Just trim those 30 pounds. They'll help you.
Do you know that the thing that always sort of interested me was like cattle dressing, and I'm not going to come out and say it's female dominant because I don't know if that's true, but just about all of the cattle dressers I know are female. I can think of two that aren't, and I know a lot of cattle dressers. It's just funny how it doesn't sort of transfer, because it's not the same job, not the same job at all, but it's a similar job in a sense, you know. And you would sort of think they don't come hand in hand, but you could see the sort of similarities in the fact that there would be a lot of women going over to that because it's just a similar job. But it's funny how over time these things just develop a dominance on one side, and it sort of takes like an active shift, like you're sort of creating with the different photos of other folk, to make that change. And that's got to be a good thing, because there's, as I've said a million times, males have benefits, females don't, females have benefits that males don't, and we bring all of them together to do a job pretty well, especially in a position like yourself. You've got one male and one female. It's interesting to see it grow. And I mean, like, even like women in farming in general has I don't think it in any way increased in numbers, women in farming. We just don't have the typical archetypal, the farmer who's the man, being the person. It's now just everyone's the same, and that's such a more positive and refreshing industry to be in. There's still a lot of work to do, like, but
exactly,
the right direction, you know.
Definitely.
And like there's a women in agriculture podcast, and I don't know the ladies' names that do it. It's not called the Women in Agriculture podcast, but it's like that sort of thing. And just some of the folk you see on there, I'm like, yeah, these folk are leading their industry, and it's I don't really see it as men and women, in fairness, but I get we've sort of got a sense, but
just nice and equal now, isn't it? It's really good. It's nice to see.
Yeah, it is. It's very positive to see. Well, Sophie, I've learned a lot about hoof trimming. I knew just about zero before this kicked off. We've actually got a hoof trimming course. Well, at the point of recording, not the point of release. We've got a hoof trimming course at work going on, and I think we've got 3 or 4 students that are quite keen in doing it on Thursday. So and 2 of them are female. So maybe you'll be seeing some more from Scotland appearing on Instagram in a week or so.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely. Thank you for coming on. But there's 2 questions I ask everyone. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched an R2Kast. I'm not offended. If not, don't worry. But there's 2 questions we ask absolutely every person, and I'm actually quite impressed at this point that I started these interviews in June 2020, and those 2 questions have been the same all the way. So yeah, no, it's quite good going. Actually, I'm quite impressed with myself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And if you had any tips for folk getting into, and we've probably kind of already touched on this, but we'll ask it anyway. Any tips for folk getting into hoof trimming? What would they be?
So, where do I see myself in 5 years? I'm hoping that I'll still be doing it.
Good. With a 9-year-old maybe helping you.
You never know. You can make all the brews. Yeah. I'm really hoping that I'll be able to carry it on, and that. Maybe that my dad might be still doing it part-time. I don't know. But yeah, I'm really hoping that I can carry that on. Advice-wise, I'd probably say it's always good to get a bit of experience to make sure it's something that you definitely want to do. Because I was lucky enough to start going with my dad at first, and that's how my interest grew. But yeah, if you can kind of like, maybe even if you're a farmer, that if you're working on a farm and you want to get interested in doing feet, then lifting some feet up and having a look and having a bit of a go that way, and maybe getting on a course or something like that. But yeah, I always think if you can kind of go along with a trimmer on a day or 2 and see how it works and see them trimming, I think that's always a good thing to do.
Excellent. I take it's not one of those jobs you just jump into because you've got a lot of farmers that aren't going to be happy and you don't do it right. You've got to make sure you're sort of jumping in correct. Yeah, you got to. Yeah, I mean, you've got to make sure if you want to do it properly, you've got to do a course. I think it's really. I think by law you have to. Do you not? Yeah. Well. Is that wrong? It's a bit of a grey area. I mean, any person can kind of go on a farm and trim cows' feet, but as the milk buyers are getting a lot more where they're saying like you've got to have a professional category 1 foot trim that regularly does check days and stuff like that, which I think is a very good thing, because you just don't want a cowboy coming onto your farm trimming and wrecking your cow's feet. That's like one of the worst things that could happen. So I think that's really important that you make sure that your foot trimmers done a course and stuff like that. It's really important. Excellent. Good. Well, here, Sophie, thank you very much for the tips. Thank you for telling us where you think you'll be, and thank you also for coming on. I appreciate it. These things always absolutely fly by. We're over 50 minutes there, and it feels like 2. Yeah, no, it disappears, doesn't it? It's like that. it just totally disappears. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on. If you want to check out Sophie and you are listening or watching, it's the Female Hoof Trimmer on Instagram. And yeah, especially if you sort of buy into that satisfying video sort of thing, it's one that's just a wee bit, I'm not good with it, but for most people it is.
Plenty of ancestors on there as well.
Yeah. This is why I am very much aware of what you do, but I must say I haven't watched them all, because some of the gnarly ones, I'm so soft, like so soft, it's embarrassing. The students bully me for it all. But yeah, you want to check Sophie out, check out the Female Hoof Trimmer on Instagram. For those of you that enjoy the podcast, every week on Friday, or next week I should say, we'll have Maria Warren on. So anyone who, do you know who Maria is by any chance, Sophie, or not aware of Maria?
No, I've not heard of her, no.
Yeah, she's about 900,000 followers on TikTok. So yeah, she's pretty entertaining.
Wow.
Yeah, no, pretty major. And it all came from our Cornish grandpa saying Granfer, or speaking, and she calls him Granfer. Sorry. So yeah, Maria, massive on TikTok, and as we were speaking about earlier, a big advocate of women in farming, and also farm safety. She works a lot with the Yellow Wellies. Not on, for those of you who don't know, Yellow Wellies are the Farm Safety Foundation. So we'll see you for that next week. Thank you for listening along, and Sophie, I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I hope you've enjoyed another excellent episode of the R2Kast. I just want to take this moment to quickly thank our primary sponsors once more, A-Plan Rural. If you follow A-Plan on social media, you'll see the work they're doing to really promote British farming and back our industry. It's been a pleasure working alongside A-Plan Rural so far, and long may it continue. The values of A-Plan Rural runs perfectly in line with the whole mantra of Rural to Kitchen, and I'm glad to have them on board. Check them out on Instagram at A-Plan Rural, and on Facebook at A-Plan Rural Insurance. See you for the next podcast.